Hi, everybody. My name is Dustin with www.gamblingonfreedom.com. I am a certified hypnotherapist specializing in problem gambling, gambling addiction, compulsive gambling. And before I continue on, I want to thank my subscribers for subscribing and spreading the word and building the channel. You guys are the ones building the channel, so thank you so much for doing that. A lot of people are getting a lot of help with just the videos themselves and coming into the practice and getting actual help with their gambling addiction. So you guys are really building the channel and helping people get help. So this is awesome. And so with that being said, today's video is going to be a lot about understanding why your nervous system really does get hijacked by this addiction. It happens the same way in every addiction, but we're going to specifically talk about gambling. And I really want you to understand something really important. I don't think I've actually addressed it in any of my other videos. I've addressed components of it, I've addressed different ways of thinking about it, but there is something very specific that happens within your nervous system, which is keeping you locked and trapped into gambling. Okay. And I want to address that here today. So, if you've watched my other videos, you know that I talk about the knowns and the unknowns in the subconscious mind. As a hypnotherapist, I work with subconscious mind, subconscious behavior, why we do the things we do, what drives us to do those things, right? And ultimately, just to put it very briefly, the subconscious mind loves the known, hates the unknown, rejects the unknown, right? And it does that because ultimately to the subconscious mind, it wants to keep everything the same. It wants to keep everything known. If you had to relearn how you drive every time you wanted to drive, you would never drive anywhere. If you had to learn how to speak every time you wanted to speak, you'd never speak. So the subconscious mind loves the familiar. It doesn't want to change. It doesn't like change, right? It actually wants to stay the same. It wants to stay familiar. Now, doesn't matter if you feel good or if you feel bad. So if the gambling addiction is ruining your life, doesn't matter. Subconscious mind knows that it's an addiction and that's the familiar, that's the known. So the subconscious mind runs on the familiar, not on how we feel. Okay, it runs on the familiar. So, when you go and you start to gamble, you're creating a lot of really positive, usually knowns around gambling, right? It's fun. You go, and maybe you go for a bachelor party or you go, for whatever reason you go, and you walk in and immediately you see this weird carpet, right? They always have some weird patterns and colors going on in the carpet. That's already hypnotizing you, right? And then you have all these shining lights and shining things going off and beeping, and you hear maybe a jackpot way off into the distance that you don't even recognize as something. You just kind of subconsciously pick it up, right? The big jackpot happens over here, and people are laughing and having fun over here, and there's some beautiful women over here, and then there's some handsome dudes over there, and everybody's drinking and you're drinking and the lights are going, vibrant, and you're winning money, and everything is becoming fun. Everything is becoming fun. You're getting excited, you're getting happy, maybe you win some money. That's always nice. And so while this is happening, first off, you're taking in all of this information through your senses, right? You can't turn off your senses, not really. I mean, you can close your eyes, but even that, you still see stuff in your mind, right? And so you close your eyes or whatever, but essentially you can't turn off your senses. So you're always bringing in information, you're always bringing in things through your senses, and you're bringing in all these really good things, right? It's positive. It's a positive experience usually, right? Sometimes it's not a positive experience, and then maybe you just leave and you never go back to the casino. But I would say 9 times out of 10, especially for a gambling addict, at first it becomes really fun. It's something that you want to do. And so you go in and you create all of these knowns, all these positive associations towards the lights and the people and the fun and the laughing and the money and all these things. It becomes very familiar. Now, this is this is the part where it gets really stuck, because what happens is all this dopamine is sparking in your mind. All this dopamine is sparking You're getting all this really good chemical reaction in your body. You're starting to feel excited. You're starting to feel happy. You're starting to feel elated. You're starting to feel uh, whatever, right? All the good feelings, happy, excited, elated, etc. And you have all this dopamine going on, all this stuff sparking in your mind. And what happens is the dopamine, the dopamine high. So essentially, let's just say you have a baseline level of dopamine and it rises when you go gamble. Well, this high here, it gets associated with what's called safety. Okay. Now, our parasympathetic nervous system is called rest and digest or ventral vagal. If you want to look at polyvagal theory, it's the theory that I use to kind of help clients through their nervous system regulation. But essentially, ventral vagal or parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest. This is where all of the good feelings come from: happiness, love, joy, compassion, relaxation, calmness, comfort, safety. Okay. The nervous system wants to be safe. It wants to be safe. And what happens is this high level of dopamine, when that becomes so familiar, so normal to the nervous system, it now equates it as safe, that this is the safe feeling we need to feel all the time. And what happens is when you're not in gambling, right, you're in your everyday life, you're working, you're at home, whatever, your dopamine levels are now baseline. They're baseline. Because they're baseline, things start to feel a little bit less good, a little bit less important. Things are more mundane, things are more routine. There's no spark, all these things. And the pain of that actually builds and builds and builds into stress, which is called going into the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, right? So what happens though is because your nervous system has equated and has associated high levels of dopamine, this high as what is now normal and safe. Because that happens when you're down here in baseline levels of dopamine, it no longer feels good. And so this actually becomes stress. I'm just going to do it this way for a moment, but the idea is brings you into a sympathetic expression of your nervous system, which is fight flight. And because your nervous system naturally wants to be in parasympathetic, it will relieve this and move away from it, move away from this pain and towards the pleasure of finding relief, essentially. And that relief comes from gambling because that's the normal. That's the normal way that we're supposed to feel, is this high level of dopamine. And what happens is, unfortunately, you go and over time, especially, even though you do this a lot, what happens is you need more and more and more and more of this dopamine to get to this level, right? You need more and more excitement, more and more happiness, more and more fun. And eventually, this it's really hard to get back to that sort of really high level of dopamine sometimes, sometimes a little bit lower, right? But ultimately, this is safety. And so what happens is, the nervous system's natural state is parasympathetic. That's what we are naturally in. It isn't until, somebody's about to mug us or we are about to fall off a cliff or if we're about to get hit by a car or whatever, that's when the sympathetic nervous system is supposed to engage and put us in fight flight so we can run away or fight, right? Makes sense. So we're supposed to be in parasympathetic. We're supposed to be in rest and digest. We're supposed to be relaxed and calm most of the time, unless something is happening that's triggering a reaction to fight or run away, right? And so the problem when it comes to gambling addiction, or any addiction, but again, we're going to put it into the context of gambling here. The problem is that the nervous system gets hijacked. The nervous system gets hijacked. It now believes that because this is the normal high, that this is the familiar, that this is safe, that this is safety, this is rest and digest. Still, you're in your parasympathetic when you go gamble because it is fun and it is exciting and it is, relieving, and all of the parasympathetic expressions and emotions and feelings and sensations that you'd get from the parasympathetic, they are attached to the addiction itself. So what happens is, because this is safety and because this is good and because this is where my nervous system naturally wants to be, What happens is whenever it's not there, even if it's just everyday life, just normal levels of dopamine, or if you lose, your night and you have a lot other stress, like the paychecks being, you spent your paycheck, don't have money for groceries, lied to your spouse, hurt people that you shouldn't have hurt, broken promises to them and yourself, and all these things. So you have mundane life because dopamine levels are down, and then you have all that extra stress on top of it, and then debt, and of course, and all of the other stuff, right? And so what happens is that pain gets too much, and you're in sympathetic nervous system states, and now because naturally your nervous system wants to be parasympathetic, just naturally, that's its natural default state, it automatically will move you away from this pain to pleasure. And the only coping strategy that the nervous system understands that gets you into that level of safety with that high dopamine, which is what it's equating to safety. It's not normal levels of dopamine. It's you need high levels of dopamine to feel safe now in your nervous system. And so it moves you away from it to go back into the addiction. And then that addiction, it grows stronger because it's like, well, we're exactly where the nervous system truly wants to be. And that is why it's such a problem with any addiction. It doesn't matter what it is, because the addiction itself puts you in a false state of parasympathetic. The parasympathetic is being hijacked, and that is the default state, right? The parasympathetic is naturally rest and digest, calm and relaxation, comfort, happiness, excitement, love, compassion, all of these things. And you're here when you gamble. You see, you're here when you gamble, so you're already in parasympathetic, which is where you want to be. You're naturally there, and that's where you naturally want to be anyway. So anything that's not this becomes pain and stress, and so it just brings you right back to it, which then keeps feeding that cycle. So it's really interesting to me to see it this way. I hope this helps you guys too to see it this way, because when you understand that your nervous system is being hijacked every time you go into the casino, and every time you go into the casino and you have that high, you're creating more and more familiarity with the nervous system to be high like that. That's what's happening. And so if that is equated to safety and comfort and relaxation, then it's no wonder that's the coping strategy. That's no wonder that the gambling becomes the attempted solution to all of your problems, because all of your problems are stressful. And you don't want to be in sympathetic fight flight systems. You want to be in parasympathetic, but parasympathetic is where the addiction is. That's where the problem is. And so it's just a vicious loop. And it's a psychocybernetic loop, is what it's actually called. But it's a vicious loop. And it's it's really it's a really sad thing, to be honest with you guys. It's sad. I see a lot of people whose lives are affected and ruined by this. And the gambling industry doesn't care, guys. The gambling industry does not care if you win or if you lose. I promise you they don't. All they care about is if you keep playing, right? Think about it. If you win a jackpot, they already know, sure, you might go and you might take it and pay off your debt, but they already know you're going to bring the rest of it back into the casino. You're addicted to it, right? They already know this. The casinos bank on this psychology. They bank on understanding your mind and your nervous system better than you, right? And that's why I'm doing this channel, because if I can help educate you guys with the nervous system to help understand how the addiction is getting stuck and trapped, I want you guys to really see it for the illusion that it is. You're not actually getting relief, right? And I talked about this in another video. This fun relief, this high dopamine, this isn't even real relief, right? Because I like the example that if I'm wearing shoes that are two sizes too small, then at the end of the day, after I've done my work and I've walked around all day and I've done my errands and I take off my shoes, yeah, I'm going to have relief, but it's not real relief. It's manufactured relief because of the stress I was under from wearing shoes two sizes too small. That's exactly what's happening with the gambling addiction. You wouldn't need the relief if your everyday life was nice and good again, right? If you had if normal levels of dopamine were parasympathetic for you now, and felt safe just like they used to before you ever gambled, you know before you gambled, you didn't use gambling to cope, right? It's a coping strategy. It's a coping mechanism, right? That's all it is. It's a coping mechanism to life, essentially, to life stresses and life pain. And so if you didn't have life pain, right? And what I mean by that is it's not like necessarily that nothing will ever go wrong in your life. Of course, there will be bad things. But what I'm saying is if normal level life dopamine levels aren't considered sympathetic now because they don't feel like this high up here, which is considered safe now, if the normal levels of dopamine are sort of revitalized, refreshed to the point where everyday life feels good again and you can do whatever you want, and you can just go to a movie to have fun or whatever. If normal everyday life events now are also safe and feel good, what happens is that's no longer stress. You no longer need relief, right? And so the only reason that you need relief in the first place is because there's stress, right? Because normal life doesn't feel good anymore. You lose all your money, you lose all your time, you lose your paychecks, you lose your groceries, you lose your car, you break promises, you hurt yourself, you by breaking your own promises, etc. So everyday life is boring and mundane and routine on top of all that extra stress and pain. Eventually, you're going to move back to whatever the nervous system believes is parasympathetic and familiar to be rest and digest, which is the high levels of dopamine. But it's impossible to get that in everyday life. Like you're going to have more dopamine sparking and firing off if you're making money, if you're having fun, if you're drinking alcohol, if you're with friends, doing the same thing, if you're, realizing that you just made more money in one hand than 2 weeks at work, and all these plans and dreams and big ideas and jackpots in your mind are happening. Just there's so much dopamine, so much pleasure, so much feel good chemical, so much reward happening on this high level, and you do that over and over and over again, month after month, year after year, eventually this becomes the normal. This becomes all you want, from a nervous system standpoint. And so now, even if there's a problem, even if you recognize it as a problem, you realize that you're losing all your money and, you're hurting people and all these things, it doesn't really matter because the nervous system wants to be in parasympathetic, it wants to be safe, and it's equating this as safety now, this high level. And anything that's not high level like this isn't safe anymore. So you eventually go into stress, you eventually go into sympathetic, which is fight flight response. There's nothing to fight, so you have to flight, you have to run. And so the feelings make you run away because we don't like negative feelings, and it brings you right back into the addiction itself, which is high levels of dopamine, coping strategy to relieve the sympathetic nervous system to come back into parasympathetic. So it literally hijacks your entire nervous system. And you wouldn't need this relief if the stress wasn't here. And so, how do you get the stress? Well, you get the stress from losing all your money and doing all the losing at the end of the night and all the consequences that come from that, and from everyday life of lower dopamine levels. But think about the first part of that, you wouldn't be losing money and breaking promises to people and hurting people and, not trusting yourself anymore and selling things and taking out payday loans and all this stuff. You wouldn't even be doing that if you weren't gambling in the first place, right? So that part of the stress would be gone. And if you reconnected to your life and were able to feel good about doing everyday good things like going to the movies and hanging out with friends and just talking, right? Walking, exercising, doing all the things that actually better you, when that becomes just as fun and normal and familiar, and that's what you like to do now, and that's parasympathetic, there'd be no reason to gamble at all, right? That the urge to gamble would completely fall. And so with this work, I get asked sometimes, like, how could I make the claim that a person could get out of gambling addiction fairly quickly? It doesn't have to take 2 years and the standard approaches and stuff. Well, because, if you allow yourself to really process the emotions underneath the gambling, because it's never about the gambling. Remember, the gambling is the attempted solution. It's what gets you back into parasympathetic, according to the nervous system. It's just hijacked to a high level. And so it's the attempted solution to your problems, not the problem itself. Your problem is life, and then all of the money and everything that you lose, all the consequences that come from losing. And so what happens is when you're when you're going through this process of changing all this stuff around, eventually you get to the point where the desire to gamble is just gone. There's no desire. You don't really need an extra coping strategy, right? And that's what this is. It's a coping strategy. And I have a lot of people, they come in and they're like, well, do you need extra support? Do I need to have people in my life to, control my money and block me at casinos and all these things. I've been asked, am I ever going to get to a point where I can go into a casino, put in $100 and then leave if I lose, right? Not chase the loss. All of that's true. Yes, you can. Yes, you can do that, at some point, because it is just a coping strategy. And when the urge to need a coping strategy is gone, you wouldn't need the coping strategy. You don't need the gambling anymore. Now, I want to be very clear about this. Yes, they could get to a point where you could just simply test yourself. You could put in $20, $100, take it out, and let's say it gets taken and then you leave, right? And you don't dwell on it, you don't chase it. And that's a very real and possible thing. And that's what I want to get you to. Just be aware, just know and understand that the longer you gamble, the more the addiction comes back, right? I hear all the time too, about being a professional gambler and, if they can do it, why can't I? But the problem with that is just because they're a professional gambler and just because they do have better odds, they have more skill and they can make more money, doesn't mean they're not addicts. Doesn't mean that they're not gambling addicts. They're still gambling addicts. They're just professional gambling addicts, right? It's the same thing though. They're still gambling addicts. Yeah, they might have better odds. Yeah, they might have better skill. But again, it doesn't matter if you win because the casino just wants you to keep playing. The more you play, the more the casino wins. The more you play, the more the casino has the edge, right? Period. Plain and simple, period. And so, yes, you can get to a point absolutely where, every once in a while, maybe your friends and you decide to go out and you'll have the ability to just say, hey, here's $100. That's what I brought. You'll lose it. Maybe you'll win some. You'll do whatever that happens. Let's just say you lose it. And yeah, yes, you won't necessarily chase the loss because the urge will be gone. The feelings will be gone. The nervous system's back into regular parasympathetic nervous system. It's not being hijacked anymore. The urges, the cravings, all of that's down. Their desire is down. And so, yes, you could do that. But I want to be clear, if you were to go back into the same fashion that you were before and you do it every weekend, especially after stressful things, and you start to train your nervous system to go back into high levels of dopamine to handle stress and handle life, you're going to be addicted again at some point, right? So yes, you can do that. But when you talk to those people, let's just put it this way. When you talk to those people who do take $100 in and then, they lose and then they leave and don't chase their loss. When you talk to those people about gambling, they don't usually have a very high opinion of gambling. I'd be willing to bet you could talk to them and they'd be like, yeah, it's cool, but I definitely wouldn't do it all the time. Like I lose $100 and I ain't touching anymore. Like I'm gone, right? And that's the mindset, right? So it's the mindset shift that keeps you addicted, right? It's the mind, well, not the mindset shift that keeps you addicted, but the nervous system that keeps you addicted, but the mindset shift that keeps you playing, right? So it's like, oh, well, I feel better now. I don't have to chase my loss. Let me keep doing it. And that's how the addiction would grow because it would be consistent and you would essentially just go right back into it. So, but be aware, yes, there is absolutely the ability to decrease the urges, decrease the cravings, get out of gambling addiction. And then now let's just say you have a bachelor's party or something like that as an occasion and you go and you're, wondering, can I enjoy myself and put $100 in and lose it and then nothing happens and not chase that loss? Yes, that's possible. It's very possible. I don't necessarily agree that if you did that, you'd go right back into the addiction. I don't think that's true, not at least not the way that I help people. That urge is gone. The desire is gone after we work together. And so once it's gone, you know, you might lose something and then that's just it. It's fine. It's whatever. So that's kind of the mindset that happens. If you continue, then just like you did before to build the addiction in the first place, it would build again and you'd get to that point again for sure. So it's not you could always go back into it, is what I want to point out here. You could always go back into it. But that's up to you, right? That would be up to you. I mean, if you're not desiring gambling, there's no urge to go, but you're forcing yourself to do it for whatever reason, that's up to you guys, right? That's a choice that you're making, just like you did when you first started gambling. And it's possible you'd go back into it. So be aware that when you're doing this kind of work, you really just want to quit. It's so much better to just quit because it's not doing anything for you guys, right? Gambling itself, as long as you believe and think and feel like it's serving you in some way, you're going to continue to gamble. That's the whole point, right? If it's serving you, you're going to do it eventually. And so that really is kind of how the book that I wrote is set up. It's on an Amazon link. I have it in my profile. I have it in the description. But I dispel the myths and the illusions and the traps that gambling has in the book. And the whole point is for you to start to realize it doesn't matter if you win, it doesn't matter if you lose. You see the traps for themselves. Notice how everything that the casino does is designed to hook you and hijack your nervous system so they can keep you addicted. Everything they do, from the advertisements to the floors to the slot machines to the sounds to the lights to everything, the moment you walk into that casino, you are being hypnotized. Promise you. Okay, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. The moment you walk in to a casino, you are being hypnotized. The moment you see an advertisement, you're starting to get hypnotized. Okay. Advertising and marketing is a form of hypnosis, by the way. And so it's what advertised and marketed all the time. And they know it, right? They know it. The psychology is there. All right. They know the psychology. They've been doing this for a long time. That's why the house always wins. They know what to do. Okay. They know how to hijack your nervous system. They know how to hijack your subconscious mind. They know exactly what they're doing. And it doesn't matter if you win, it doesn't matter if you get a jackpot. All they care about is keep playing, because on a long enough timeline, you're going to lose everything. So they don't care. So that's about it for this video. I'm going to leave a link in the description below for the Amazon book. It's The Easy Way to Quit Gambling and Breaking All the Illusions around it. And the idea is, once you see this stuff, once you realize that it is all just an illusion, that it's all just a trap, that it's literally just designed to hurt you, you won't want to go. The desire falls, the desire leaves. It's like everything that you could probably think of is an illusion, right? The big win. Oh, I'm going to get a jackpot. I'm going to pay off my debt and everything's going to be better. I'm never going to gamble again. That's an illusion. Chasing a loss is an illusion. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of them right now, but every chapter in the book is based on an illusion, and it shows you how it's dismantled very easily so you can understand that everything you're doing in the casino, all of the gambling, you're not actually getting anywhere. Okay. You're not actually going to build wealth that way. You're not even actually feeling real fun or relief. It's manufactured relief because you have stress in your life. And so it's a coping strategy to relieve stress. It's not even real relief. Real relief, real fun, real excitement, real love, real happiness doesn't require something at the end of it. If you go to a movie because you genuinely want to go see a movie, even if it was bad, you would walk out and wouldn't feel like you lost anything. It would just be Well, maybe it wasn't a good movie, but that's okay, right? It doesn't even matter. Versus you go gamble and you lose everything, and now you feel really, really horrible, right? And even if you win, you know, there's still there's still stuff it takes from you, right? Like even if you win the night, you still might reflect on all the times you lost too, right? And so it doesn't take anything from you when you have real happiness and real love and real joy, right? It doesn't take anything. If you go play a sport or something because you genuinely want to, even if you lose the games, you're still happy that you did it, right? Whereas in gambling, you go because you want to have fun, you think you want to have fun, you think that it's because you want to have that relief. But really, if you lose again in a gambling scenario, now you've everything is taken from you, right? So real fun, real relief, real joy, real happiness, it doesn't take anything from you afterwards, whereas gambling does. Okay. So it's not real relief, it's not real fun, it's not real happiness. You're going because there's a coping mechanism and your nervous system has been hijacked for a long time now at high levels of dopamine, which your nervous system has normalized and feels safe around now. And if it's not this, then nothing else feels as good. Then that's not the normal. That's not safe. That's not comfortable. Eventually, stress builds and you go right back into it. So we have to process the emotions, guys. It's an emotional problem. It's not logical, it's emotional. You have to regulate the nervous system. You have to get everything into balance so that when you think about gambling, you don't even want to go. There's no point. It doesn't do anything for you. It's not making you feel better. You realize the trap, you realize the illusions. Your nervous system is regulated properly to where when you think about it and when you even hear your friends wanting to go, you're just like, nah, it's cool. I'm going to go work out instead. I'm going to exercise because that actually builds my life better. I'm going to work a double shift because I want more money and I actually want it to stick in my account, right? Like, you'll get to a point where you're making choices and decisions and having new solutions and resources that you never had before because before you had a coping strategy, right? And that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I just wanted to put a new spin on it, give you guys another understanding that, you know, one of the reasons why it gets stuck in the nervous system is because the way you feel when you gamble becomes so familiar with that high level of dopamine that your nervous system recognizes that high level of dopamine as safety, and it naturally wants to feel safe. Your nervous system wants to be in parasympathetic. It does not want to be in sympathetic. It does not want to be in dorsal vagal. It wants to be in rest and digest, in ventral vagal, in parasympathetic. That's where its natural state is. And that is where the addiction is. It's in that state. So anytime you're not in this state, you're in another sympathetic or dorsal vagal state, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or shutdown, one of those, and it's going to push you into it because this is where it wants to be naturally. And so it's just a vicious cycle. And we have to regulate. That's the only way that I know of. It's the fastest way. It's the only way, in my honest opinion, to actually help you break out of gambling addiction now, not 6 months, not 2 years from now. Now, it has to happen now, right? Because the longer you wait, the more money you lose, and the more people you hurt, and the more lack of trust you have in yourself, and all the bad things, right? So, if you found this video helpful, follow, subscribe. Thank you again for my subscribers for building the channel and helping people get help with gambling addiction. I think this is going to be a huge epidemic in the next 10 years. It's already huge. It's ruining so many people's lives, and I really don't want to see that. So if you want to sign up for a consultation, I'd be happy to talk to you. If you guys have a problem with your gambling, or if you know somebody who has a problem gambling, feel free to reach out, set up a consultation, www.gamblingonfreedom.com. Amazon book in the link description below in my bio as well. And again, that book, all you have to do is read it. Just read it. The design is literally to help you dismantle every possible illusion that I can think of to get you out of gambling. If it still serves you, you won't quit, period. As long as you think that it's giving you anything good, anything powerful, anything money, happiness, joy, relief, as long as it's giving you those things, you're not going to quit. You have to see it for what it is. It's an illusion, it's a trap. It's a game the casino plays to drain you dry and ruin your life and your family's life. Okay, I want you to see that. So if you don't want to do consultation, if you don't want to do one-on-one sessions, they are the most powerful way to get out of this as fast as possible, in my honest opinion. But I do have a very reasonably priced book down below. Read the book and just see for yourself if you can stop the desire. You know, if you want to go that route, that's perfectly fine. So again, follow, subscribe, uh, and thank you again for the subscribers. All right, that's it for now, guys.